Hello everyone, today I'm going to show my prototype of menu selection that is truly one button only. Here's a demonstration of what it looks like. With the game in play mode, I will use the spacebar only to move between selections and hold down the spacebar on a choice to make that selection locked in. You can notice how a green dot appears next to each selection when the spacebar is pressed. The dot also scales in size when the selection is being locked. This is to give visual feedback to the player. Now I'm going to show you the code. I have a mono behavior script which I have attached to my camera game object. I have 4 serialized game objects, which allow you to set these objects in the Unity editor. These could also be public instead of serialized private variables. The active button does not need to be visible in the editor, but I used it for troubleshooting purposes. Next are 2 serialized fields, the first being an int that helps keep track of the current highlighted menu selection. The float variable will be used for a timer, which will handle if a player is locking in their choice, and also help with the lerp effect on the scale on the green dot. Then for the private variables, I have a bool which will be used to determine if the scale lerp effect will take place, and 3 floats that will be used in the lerp function. In the start method, I default the menu selection to 0 or start game in this example, and set the timer to 0 to ensure its values are cleared out. And for the update method, I have my selection method, selection highlight method, and select lerp method being called. Let's look at the selection method I wrote. I start it by checking if the spacebar is being held down. If it is, I start a timer, which can be done by checking if the timer value is less than the desired length of time. If it is, increase the timer value by adding time.delta_time to it. I also have my lerp bool being checked here. I could move this to when the spacebar is pressed down for efficiency, but this is good enough for my prototype. Then if the timer does hit our desired time, that means a selection was made. And then you can see that I check if the spacebar is released. If it is, I check to see if the current menu selection is less than 2. But this will vary depending on how many options you have. In my case, I have start game, options, and exit which correspond to 0, 1, and 2 respectively. I also reset the timer back to 0 and set the lerp bool to false. The else statement just cycles the menu selection back to 0. For the selection made method, I used a switch statement to check what the current value of the menu selection is and just log a statement saying what the button would do. I should put a default case in, but is not needed for my prototype. And then I set my timer back to 0. This is just added redundancy. For the selection highlight method, I just use another switch case, checking my menu selection and then activate or deactivate my green dot game objects accordingly, and then set my active button variable to the button that is now active. Lastly is my selection lerp method. This is important since it gives visual feedback to the player to let them know that they are actively controlling the game. I just use an if statement to check if the lerp bool is true. If it is, I calculate my lerp value and store it as a float. I then scale my green dot object by the stored lerp value. For the else statement, if lerp is false, then the scale is reset back to the original size. I want to thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing and sharing. I would love to hear your feedback down in the comments. Take care and be safe.